What's up, everyone? Here in the shop, um, I got a whole pile of parts from the 2JZ tear down that I need to clean up, and some stuff that I'm going to be swapping out. If you follow me on Facebook, or if you're in any of the Toyota groups on Facebook, I posted, about some of the issues that I found in this motor. Uh, it's not detrimental to the motor, but it's things that I don't like, and I'm not going to run this motor for a long period of time. So, one, I need to get the truck drivable. I guess, on the street where I can actually halfway make sure that it's safe to drive. And the only way to do that is with a motor. Well, I don't have the money right now to build a motor or go through this one and, do a full turbo build, rebuild, whatever you want to call on it. So I had an idea, and, you know, I'm sure people have done it, but I'm going to do it. Uh, I bought my bearings, my rods, excuse me, my piston rings, all off of eBay. Um, I don't care what you say. Um, I know what you're going to say. Don't do it. Don't buy the stuff. That's what everybody says. Well, I did it anyway because it's low cost. I can throw it in the motor, and hopefully it will run at least a month, 2 months, something like that. I'm not sure. I'm going to find out how long it'll run, and I guess ideally this whole thing is going to be, how cheap can you put a 2JZ together? A 2JZ NAT build. So I haven't did the price add up, but I made sure that everything that I have, that I'm using, that I'm going to be using for this motor, is going to be primarily from eBay. I have a few things that are coming that came from Amazon, but when I get to it and I start talking about it, in each video, I will have links for the individual items if you want to do this. You know, uh, I mean, what really made me want to do this is, one, not having the money to build the motor, because I got to looking and I wanted GTE rods to put in this motor. Well, you can't find used OEM GTE rods for no less than like $400 or $500. Well, I got so much money wrapped up in the rest of the truck, I don't have $400 or $500 just for rods. So, just to be safe, I ordered rods, but they come from eBay. And what I did is I looked at a lot of the listings on eBay. They all pretty much had the same generic picture. But if you look in the descriptions on each eBay listing, uh, where it says brand or manufacturer name or whatever, if it says unbranded, I didn't order those, although they are still right around the same price. What I did is I found some that, supposedly had somewhat of a brand name, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misstating, and if you click on the link, they're unbranded. I don't know. But what I ordered was cast rods, and they are supposedly GTE stock replacement rods that are of original equipment manufacturer quality. So, a lot of stuff says this on eBay, Amazon, all these other cheap websites and stuff like that. So, I really wanted to find out, so I ordered them. And I look back this evening, and, full disclosure, I think I paid like $125 $130, something like that, on eBay with free shipping for these rods. So, I was really, really expecting for them to look like crap, all crooked. I really don't even know what I expected, because you hear so much bad stuff about things on eBay. Well, I've bought a lot of stuff from eBay throughout my life, for motors, because I haven't always had a lot of money. My family hadn't always had a lot of money. We still don't have a lot of money. So, I eBay things, I Amazon things, and if it breaks, it breaks, and I kick myself in the ass, and it's like, yeah, I probably should have bought a quality part. Well, here we go again. So, let's show you the rods real quick. I just pulled one out, and I'm gonna pull one of the GE rods out of the piston. I got one of the circlips already out, so I just need to get the pin out so I can pull the piston off, and then I can actually do a side-by-side comparison of the GE rod to the GTE rod from eBay. That's still a cast rod. It's not a H-beam rod or anything. Like I said, it's just supposed to be stock replacement. So let me get this pin out, and we can compare the rods. Now, good thing about 2JZ stuff that I'm finding out now is the wrist pins for the pistons are floating. So what that means is once you pull the circlip out, this pin will come out. You don't have to have a press to get them in and out, which is good. And even though you hear me tapping on it, and you might see me, I don't even know where the camera's pointing at, but I'm tapping on it because it's in there pretty snug, but it's still a floating pin. And that's a good thing to me, because that lets me know that there's not much slop in the wrist pin. So when I put it in the new rod, hopefully my oil clearances will be right. Hopefully. I'm open to everything at the moment, because this is the how cheap you can do it from eBay build. So as long as I can get the wrist pin out without hitting the piston and causing damage, that should be good. So I think, yes, that's out far enough. So now this is number one piston, or this was number one piston. Now, since I'm changing the rods, changing the rings, it'll end up in whatever cylinder it ends up in. I got a bucket of degreaser somewhere that these are going to sit in for a little bit while I go eat dinner, and then I'm going to pull the rings off of them, Scotch-Brite them, get them nice and clean, and then I'm going to do something really crazy. I'm going to see if they will fit on my little benchtop lathe, and I'm going to see if I can actually maybe take, I don't even know, half a thousandth or something off the top of the piston. One, to clean it up, because number 6 piston, I haven't got to that. That'll be in a different video, but I'll show you. I did a short on it, but the damage that I found in the cylinder head of bore number 6, and the damage was also identical on the piston top of number 6. So because of that, I don't think it's really deep in the crown of the piston, So I think I might be able to just turn a little bit off the top. Also, since I'm doing um, a NAT build, taking a little bit off the top is of course going to drop the compression in the cylinders. So I'm gonna have to be really careful to make sure I'm really close with how much I take off on the lathe if I do it. I mean, it might not even fit on my lathe. Um, and even then, I still might really want to do it and take them over to my dad's and use his big floor model lathe. Either way, we'll figure something out. I am running the GTE thicker head gasket, so my compression ratio is already going to be lower. So I don't want to go too low because I want to be able to drive this on the street, and I don't want to have to push so much boost in it that I'm gonna blow it up first 2 or 3 times that I run it. You know, I'm just trying. I know I'm building a cheap eBay motor, but I'm gonna try to be smart about it and possibly build a really cheap eBay motor that maybe could put out a little bit of power and could be dailied for a month or two. Who knows? We'll find out. All right. So the rods. This is the GE rod that come out of the motor on cylinder number 1. And so the bearings are still in it. I haven't pulled the bearings out or anything. I'm going to tighten the bolts down so we can get it halfway like it's supposed to be tight, I guess. I don't know. Alright, so looking at the wrist pin. This is the first one I've taken off to look at the wrist pin. And I mean, it's got some wear, but it's not really that bad. Not really that bad. Now, what's really funny is, you know, I cleaned the block, pressure washed the block, all types of stuff because there was metal all in the oil, in the block. I mean, in the oil pan, in the oil pickup. I'm sure there's metal in the oil pump. I haven't taken it apart yet, but I need to take it apart and clean it. And so, but, you know, there's metal shavings right here on the piston rod, connecting rod, piston rod. I actually had a guy on Facebook, you know, I call them piston rods because it's a rod that connects to the piston. It's a southern thing, I guess, and he wanted to correct me and, you know, put connecting rod with a little asterisk or whatever. And you know, that crap is so hilarious to me. I mean, you don't have better time, or you don't have something better to do with your time than to be a freaking grammar Nazi and tell me it's a connecting rod, not a piston rod. Come on, man. All right, so here you go. Factory GE rod. You see how narrow it is here? See how narrow it is here? It does have, you know, your oil hole to oil the bearings, of course. And, you know, it's a decent looking rod. It's got some weight to it. I don't have my scale out here, but I will be weighing these. I'm waiting on someone to get me a weight on a factory OEM GTE rod. Once I get that, I'm going to weigh all 3, or I'm going to weigh the 2 that I have and compare it to the weight of the factory GTE rod. Is it pointless? Probably. But I just want to see, because this is the rod that I got from eBay. Okay? So I've never seen a GTE rod in person You know, a real or factory GTE rod. Now, what I can tell you is side by side, the eBay rod is bigger. It does have finish imperfections. And what I mean by that is, if you look here on the side of where your bolt goes, right here, where it was machine ground, well, there's a itty bitty tiny void right here. You know, a itty bitty tiny pit. Now, that right there, that one little pit on there. I used to work at GKN, is big automotive manufacturing place. I used to run CNC lathes and then friction welders and things like that. So I learned a little bit about metal and the different grades of automotive parts. Because I can tell you that the plant that I worked at, we made drive shafts and prop shafts, okay? And CV joints for axles, or CV axles, whatever you want to call them. You know, we called each thing had a different name. You know, you had the bell and the tulip and your bearings and your rollers and your shafts. You know, it was all broken down to me because I worked at the manufacturing plant. But I can tell you that we manufactured parts for pretty much every single auto manufacturer, all on the same machines with the same part castings. The only thing that differentiated the level of the part, which I guess would be, if you look on eBay or you look on Amazon, you have your name brand part. You know, like GKN was actually a brand name. You can buy it at AutoZone or whatever. But we also made the OEM axles, prop shafts and things for the Hummer and for BMW and for Lexus, Toyota. You know, we were making all the same range of parts for all the different manufacturers. And what I mean by this is, take a we'll just say Hummer, because that was the last thing I most recently worked with. In the weld cells, there's a tulip, you know, the actual bell looking thing that has the bearings in it that goes, that once the bearings in it, that's what flexes, you know. Well, on the Hummer, they have one that's really short, and the cup has a plate that sits on top. Well, that plate is stuck on there by hand. It's stuck on a automated rotary welder, MIG welder, and it MIG welds the plate on the top. We take this bale with the plate, put it in a lathe, and it's turned. Then you put it in a grinder, and it's ground and final ground and all this other stuff. Then it's inspected. Okay, so inspection is key. And inspection is for each individual part, even down to the little round rollers that are inside of the tulip or inside the bale, whatever you want to call it. Even those little rollers and cages are graded. You know, A, B, C, and D. Okay? And let's just say that typically D goes in the scrap bin. It's turned to scrap, melted down wherever they send the crap to be melted. Now, A, B, and C. A is going to be your OEM axles or your OEM drive shaft parts. It's going to be grade A. Grade B is going to be your aftermarket replacement parts that will possibly have a brand name on them, but they're not graded high enough to go to an OEM manufacturer. And then you have C. C grade. C grade is things that have imperfections that the OEM manufacturer will not accept, and then the name brand aftermarket manufacturer will not accept. Then it becomes an unbranded, cheaper part because, you know, it doesn't have a name on it. Now, these imperfections could be as superficial as the scratching, or this itty bitty tiny pit, which would have been a flaw. They would have called it a flaw in the casting, and if it was big enough, it didn't qualify to go to the right place. So it's unbranded or really cheap. Now, is this scratch going to affect the way this rod works? To me, in my mind, 9 times out of 10, no. It's not going to affect it because it's a scratch or itty bitty tiny chip on a ground edge that is 1/2 of an inch thick. So I'm going to take my chances. And plus, if you think about it from a different standpoint, when this rod, connecting rod, is in the motor and it's going up and down, up and down, up and down, you know, it has rotational force in here, and a lot of your force that's going to be exerted onto the rod is here. Not here where it bolts to the crank, because you have these 2 bolts that are at however many foot-pounds of torque holding this together so it doesn't move. As long as your bearing clearances are good, then you don't really have to worry about this down here too much, unless, you know, you're trying to run 1,000 horsepower or something. Then yeah, you want to worry about making sure this is, you know, concentric and balanced and all this other fun stuff. We're not doing that here, not right now. So back to the rod. First thing that caught me right out of the box, look at the thickness there, the thickness between the rods. Let's put the oil holes to the front. So there is a very large difference in the thickness of the rod. Okay, and so that looks like a plus to me, even though it's the eBay rod. Now, the next thing we want to look at is the width of the rod. Definitely more meat there. Whole lot more meat. You know, all meat up here in the width of the connecting rod, and then also there is more meat right here between, you know, your bearing surface. It's thicker there. At least it looks like it is. I can almost guarantee it is. And so, I mean, honestly, I'm not mad that I spent $125 on these cast rods, because, you know, it's not like this rod is bigger than the factory GE rod, but it's lighter, you know, or anything like that. I mean, there is a noticeable weight difference between this rod and this rod. So more metal hopefully means stronger rod? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Now, one thing that does bother me about this rod right here, like I said, I've never seen a GTE rod in person, except for supposedly that's what this is. So the one thing that strikes me different right off hand, besides the thickness difference, is if you look on the factory GE rods, there's a little cutout right here on both sides. Okay? That is for oiling. And, you know, that also allows oil to get down around the bearing and the crank, along with the oiling hole in the side of the rod. So what strikes me different is these rods, they don't have them. Is that an issue? It might be. And the only way I'm going to know is when somebody sends me a picture of a verified factory GTE rod. You know, I don't want to just Google it, because you can Google it and pictures pop up and people can say anything. You know, I want it from somebody that knows what they're talking about, and somebody that I'm pretty confident has pulled this rod out of a GTE that has never been messed with, or is very confident it's a factory rod. Once I see that picture and find out if that should be there, the oiling relief, then I guess I'm breaking out the Dremel tool and putting an oiling relief there. I mean, if the real factory GE rod has it, you know, what could it hurt to put it on here if it's not there? I'm going to do a little more research and find out, and I'll let you know. So, I'm going to finish breaking down the pistons and the rods so I can get all the rings off and get the pistons soaking before dinner, and then I'll get everything cleaned up and come back to you, I guess. I don't know, but that's my thoughts on the Chinese GTE rods. And, you know, until I get them in and run them, I don't really have any other thoughts on it, except visually, I mean, it looks like a rod. Oh, and you know what? You know what's even funnier? Okay, here you go. This is hilarious. You know, I'm still looking at these rods to, you know, to kind of figure what is what and all this other stuff. So if you look at the cap, at the bearing cap, you know all Toyota bearing caps have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on it, or whatever, you know, depending on if it's a main bearing or a rod bearing. Well, that number is supposed to correlate to what bearing size you're supposed to use in that rod, because of the big end diameter. Well, factory GE rod, this one has, looks like it's either a 5 or a 6 on the rod. Okay, so now we look at the eBay rod that has a 1 on it, and I want you to tell me that that almost does not look freaking identical. You know, that bearing cast cap number looks identical between the two rods. And that goes back to my point of You know, whoever is making the uh, OEM replacement rods for Toyota or Lexus, they got to do something with their parts that they make that Toyota and Lexus won't accept.